All right. Welcome to another episode of The Close-Up, a part of the Magic HQ Network. Today's a fun show. We have ringer, podcast producer, manager, senior somewhere in that title, Steve Ceruti. How you doing, man? Welcome.
I'm doing great. Yeah, no, the title doesn't matter at all. I don't know. I'm like a vibes guy for Rosillo, for Bill, and I'm like one of 3 Magic fans anybody knows. So it's always great to talk about the Magic, especially now. I know it's a little bit of a weird downturn, but it's always good to just chat and spend some time. So thanks for having me on.
Yeah, man. I'm psyched to have you. I'm glad we were able to connect after like a venting session on the Twitter like comment section. It's like, hey, let's make this happen on the show. All right, cool. It's interesting. There's not a lot of Magic fans connected to like a national media outlet or just in general outside of Orlando, Florida. So it's fun to be able to connect with someone who works in like a larger sport aspect. I consider the Ringer a national outlet at this point, not no longer like the smaller mom and pop shop that it used to be, in my opinion, but it's grown to the big dog levels. And it's always fun just to kind of get that perspective, because you see so many different elements of media than just kind of what the average fan would think. So we'll get into all that later. And we're going to get into a really good conversation here shortly. But before we do that, I got to take care of the housekeeping. Magic fans, just want to remind you all of 2 things. One is our Instagram subscriber program, $5 a month, gets you into our members only group chat, gets you 20% off Magic home games. There's custom content we make just for you weekly, often multiple times a week, and a few other benefits. So if you're interested in that, go to our pin tweet on our Instagram, $5 a month. It basically comes right back to you guys in better content and giveaways. So check that out. And then last but not least, just our quick ad read that I forgot to pull up the latest thing. All right. With the NFL playoffs right around the corner and the NBA season in full swing, BetOnline has you covered with all the up-to-date odds, news, and scores. Well, this ad read is a little off, because if you go to BetOnline right now, you'd know you could bet on the current playoffs, not the playoffs that are around the corner. Games are being played today. With the additional odds, lines, trends, and information on both desktop and mobile, you can access the world's best wagering information. Steve, I got a question for you, man. Are you a sports bettor, and would you ever bet on the Magic without Franz in the starting lineup?
I am a sports bettor. I'm actually like a really big soccer bettor. I love betting on like the Premier League. I had a big run during the last World Cup, Champions League. I always like to tweet out my picks. So yes, I actually hate betting the NBA though. I've never been really great at it. And, I know people who bet like, they'll tell you like, it's basically impossible to like consistently win in the NFL. I found that way in basketball. Like, I don't know if it's because I'm bet with my heart too much, but I definitely don't know that I would love to back the Magic without Franz, but there are some value spots. I just don't know them. So if you got any soccer betting questions, come to me, but the NBA betting stuff is not for me.
Soccer, got it. NBA, not for you. Well, if for some reason you ever needed to find a new platform that you're currently using, or if maybe you're already on it, but try out BetOnline. It's really good. I'm the same. It's a little harder for me to bet out here in California because we're not fully up to date, but like BetOnline has some ways around that, which is really cool.
There you
go. So listeners, if you want to bet on soccer, hit up Steve in the mentions. He'll help you out. And then head over to BetOnline, where you can get into the action and see all the up-to-date odds. Remember to use promo code BLEAV, that's BLEAV, to receive your 50% welcome bonus on your first episode. That's BLEAV, BLEAV. BetOnline, where the game starts. And with that, we are part of the Believe Podcast Network. And that's a wrap on the housekeeping. Steve, thank you for putting up with that. I did not prep you with I'm gonna ask you mid ad read to jump in. So anyways, here we go. So all right, man. before we get into the current season and like where we are emotionally with this up and down roller coaster of a season, I'd like to backtrack a little bit and let the fans learn a little bit more about you and how you became a Magic fan. And just even like how you got connected into the sports media world, because I find all of that interesting myself. So first off, like you're wearing a sweet Duvin Magic hat.
Shout out to the guys. Yep.
But you are located in Connecticut at the moment. How did you become a Magic fan? What's your story there?
So I grew up in Connecticut. I still live in Connecticut, and I spent some time at ESPN, which is why I'm still here. And then at the Ringer, I basically now am fully remote. So when you grow up in Connecticut, it's usually it depends on like what part of the state you're from. If you're closer to New York City, usually you become a fan of the New York teams. If you're up north a little bit more, you become kind of like closer to the Boston teams. And I was like smack dab in the middle of the state. So like the town I grew up in was like 50-50, like everybody. Like I had family members that are big Red Sox fans. I had family members that are big Yankee fans, like all over the spectrum. Patriots were there. Obviously, that was when I was a kid. They weren't good then. That was before the Brady era and all that stuff. So there weren't a lot of Pats fans. But I just never really subscribed to either of those. I just never had any connection to them. So I kind of just started rooting for the teams that I first liked when I was like 5, 6, 7 years old, or the first team that I played with in a video game. And one of my earliest basketball memories is, those Magic early finals teams. I love the jerseys. I was a big Shaq guy. And then I ended up really just becoming like a bigger Penny Hardaway fan. So it was really like Penny and Shaq, and then like the little Penny commercials that when I was a kid, and I had like the shoes and all the different gear. And then, so that was when I was like really young, 6, 7, 8, 9. And then by the time T-Mac was kind of in his like prime with the Magic in the early 2000s, that really cemented it home. And T-Mac is like probably my favorite Magic player of all time. I had all the shoes. I had all the Adidas gear that he was putting out. He's wearing like a sick hat, by the way. Whenever he does these new appearances now, he has like the cool like Adidas.
Nice.
I can't find it anywhere online. So if you know where, give me a link because I want to buy those. But so basically that's how it happened. And I'm in a friend group where like a lot of my friends are similar. Like I'm friends with a Blazers fan, with a Pistons fan. He's not having a great time right now. A Nets fan. So like we're kind of all over the place, and we just basically like what team was good in like NBA Live like 02, or that's basically the teams we played with. So T-Mac was my guy, and that's kind of what cemented it home.
That's awesome. I'll see if we can figure out what's up with T-Mac. He randomly follows me on Twitter.
Me too. I know. I don't know if he just like knows all the Magic people, but it's kind of random. I've never talked to him.
We'll see. I haven't either. I hit him up a few weeks ago to see if he'd want to come on the podcast, and I got left on red. So at least he checked it.
All right. That's all right. Yep. Maybe one day.
But if he ever responds, the first thing I'll say, hey, come on the podcast. And also we need to know about your hats. Let's get some going on.
You're missing an opportunity here, man. A lot of people want
real.
This.
I feel like interesting for your friend group. I don't know how to feel about that. It's a lot of friends with mixed emotions on their teams in the last couple of decades. Like the Blazers have been up and down, some good moments, but really like questionables with Dame. Then the Pistons, like they've been in a similar situation with the Magic up until recently, where it's like a decade of rebuilding or so. If
lottery,
not longer.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
The Nets, I mean, like what an emotional roller coaster with KD and Irving and Harding. Like Harden, sorry, not Harding. It's I feel bad for you and your friends. Not bad, but
you shouldn't.
Not a lot of success there.
You shouldn't, because in high school, my Pistons fan buddy, like they won a title in 04. So like that was like the first like of all of the teams that we had. Like, the Magic at that point had been in a title, and but I was like too young to really even remember or comprehend that. So he was like the first of our friend group that like won a championship. I remember all being like super jealous, and then that team like kind of got broken up somewhat quickly after that.
Sure.
But so you shouldn't feel bad for him. And then like my Blazers fan buddy, man, he had like a decade plus of Dame Lillard. Like that was always fun. They made a conference final. They had a good run. Yeah, maybe they like underachieved just a little bit, but none of it's been as bad as the Magic this past like decade plus. Like it's just,
the
it's been
Pistons have that nice championship run too.
Yep.
So
and
they at least have some better history than us.
And I wouldn't, again, I don't think any of them have I wouldn't buy any stock in any team higher than the Magic right now of all of those teams. But they've had some good runs. It's now our turn. It's been a rough decade. It's kind of funny because like the Magic have been good for most of like my younger life. And, obviously they've made multiple finals. They've had some of the best players in the history of the NBA play for the franchise, but this last decade, like they just couldn't get out of their own way with it. And a lot of it, I mean, I've talked to Russillo about this. Like they've just had a lot of like unlucky draft positions. Like they never had any lottery luck for so long. And the one year they had the lottery luck was like the worst draft in a decade with Oladipo. No, oddly enough, of course, Giannis goes in that draft, but like, what are we going to take Giannis to? He was barely a lottery pick projection at that. So I don't even like really like entertaining that idea. But man, I tell you, like, as far as like the teams that you're buying stock in the future, there aren't many teams higher than the Magic for sure.
No, I mean, we're definitely one of the more exciting, like young cores for Magic fans. And I mean, just in the league in general. I mean, rookie of the year, going to make an all-star team. Like, hard to be like pessimistic about this team right now, despite like the current losing that we've been going on with all the injuries and whatnot.
Yeah.
Before we get too deep into that, I do want to ask, man, like, so you're in sports media. You've worked, like you said, with ESPN and now the Ringer, both like really large outlets, obviously one of the biggest outlets, and now potentially another one of the biggest outlets in the Ringer, like, and working with Bill Simmons, Ryan Russillo, some of the biggest names too. And you are the guy that gets called on whenever there's like a magic thing, a magic
it's a very
question.
Strange place to be. I know.
Yeah. But the thought is like, one, what is your thought on national media's perspective on the Magic from someone who watches it from like a much more detailed point of view versus some of your colleagues, or not colleagues, but like people in the same market as you, and how they view the team? Like, how does that feel and whatnot?
Yeah. What's cool is like, Bill Simmons, for example, like, he'll just straight up ask me like, about what, because he watches like a lot of games. He's a big league pass guy, but like, and Russillo's always like very upfront about this, is like, no one's going to be more invested or know more about, their team than those fans. Like, I could watch all the Magic games I want as part of like the regular, just following the league schedule. And I'm not a Magic fan, so I don't have the investment. I don't necessarily know the things. And it's like, I don't know what I don't know. And so those two guys actually do a pretty good job of like being like, hey, like, I've seen this, like, what do you think? Or I've seen, like, for example, like I'm on a group chat with Bill and a bunch of other Ringer NBA people. And there was like the rumors about the Wendell Carter trade, like him being on the block. And all of them were like, oh yeah, like, maybe he'd be a fit here or there. And I was like, guys, why would they trade him? Like it's like the lowest his stock has been in years. His contract is one of the best contracts in the entire league. He makes no money considering how good he is. I think he fired his agent basically after that contract happened because of how much of a good deal it was for the Magic. I was like, well, it would take a lot for the Magic to let him go. And I think like the cool thing is like a lot of those guys, they look for that perspective. They're like, oh, that's a good point. I didn't know that. I don't follow the team as closely as you do. So, and it's like that for any, fan base. It's not just the Magic specifically. So I think those guys do a good job of like reaching out to people. Bill specifically, like he has friends, of people all across, whether it's different sports, teams, whatever. And he's good at like reaching out and being like, give me the pulse of like what's going on. Like, tell me what I don't know about the situation. So it is a little bit weird sometimes when it's like, hey, you're the voice of the Magic, which, I don't like really like being that, because there are some times where people don't like the things I say about the Magic, which is fine. Like, you don't have to agree with everything I say, but it is cool. Like, whether it be Ryan or Bill, like they'll always kind of ask me like, what do you think about this guy? Or is this guy as bad as like his stats look? Because like, a great example of that is Jalen Suggs. For 2 straight years before this year, I was like, man, there's something about him. Like, I'm telling you, like, I'm not, like, I know the stats are bad. I know the shooting numbers are bad, but he's not a bad player. He's a winning basketball player. And Bill listened to that and has like kind of been on that train for a while. And now, of course, this year he has the big breakout season. Everybody looks super smart because he talked to a guy who actually watches the game. So it is a little bit weird. But mostly those guys are good at like checking in and seeing what's up.
It's been like a couple of years now where it's like the draft special, and it was you and Kevin for the longest time. Kevin's off to other things at this point, but it's like, but you know what the nice thing is, Steve, and I bet this is like going to be refreshing for you, is like you probably won't have to be on that draft lottery special. Like, you don't. There's a lot less pressure. You don't have to feel what it's going to be to react to like the 5th or 6th or first pick anymore. It's like, hopefully not, at least. It's got to be nice feeling, like a little less pressure, maybe.
It is less pressure. Well, so one of the things that people like to throw in my face, because it was on the draft special when we took Paulo, and I don't know if you remember, I was a big Chet guy. I wanted
I do
Chet.
remember.
I don't feel like I'm wrong about that. I think Chet is incredible. However, I am happy that we got Paolo.
Sure. Yeah.
I think there's, and we can have this debate a little later if you want. Like I think everybody is happy, maybe except the Rockets. Everybody's happy. Although I'm not selling any of my Jabari stock, but I wanted Chet. We took Paolo, and that was fine. But there was a clip when Bill kind of asked me, because you have to understand, like, we are taping that in real time. Like, we don't have any information. I'm like barely on Twitter. So the whole time we're talking about like all these scenarios or whatever. And, I'm still thinking, do they still want Jabari? Or they still want Chet? Are they taking Paolo so that they can maybe trick the Rockets into potentially trading them more players and picks and actually get the guy that they wanted? So there's a clip that people love throwing in my face where I said, like, maybe we're stuck with Paolo. But I only said that because we were talking about the context of whether or not we were going to trade him or not. And so people love to say that, oh, you didn't want Paolo, you didn't like Paolo. That's not true at all. I was not unhappy with the pick. I was surprised by it. But I am very excited in the future to not have to talk about draft projections anymore, because I don't like talking about the draft. I don't watch a ton of college hoops. I do watch, like, I work with Ryan pretty closely, and he's a big NBA draft guy, so I get a lot of things from him. And he was a big Paolo was his number one player in that draft. But I don't like talking about the draft because I'm not an expert on it. But like, people love to throw that in my face about how, like, oh yeah, you said we're stuck with Paolo. I said that in relation to potentially trading him. But if we want to have the Chet conversation, we can have that too, because I think that's going to be a debate for many years to come.
You know what's great about like being a fan of something is, like, you can have your opinion, and then your opinion can also evolve as we continue to gather more information. Correct. Right? And it's
how dare you say something reasonable like that?
Oh my gosh, you wanted Chet. I mean, I have a couple friends that are gonna like bail, like get mad at me right now for being so nice to you about your Chet feelings, because I hated Chet and did not hated, but I really didn't want him, and I've given them a lot of crap for like being low on Paolo. But that's okay. Like, first time on the show, first time you and I really interacting, like, it's okay that you wanted Chet. I'm not too annoyed at that. That's okay. You've grown. And Chet's going to be awesome.
That's the thing.
Yeah,
that's the thing. They're both good. Like, yeah, he got hurt last year. And I think, you can make the argument that, and I think this is the correct answer, is that the Magic needed a guy more like Paolo, and OKC needed a guy more like Chet. Yeah. Because the Magic need a face of the frame. I mean, I'm still sort of like in the camp that there is a path for Franz to still potentially be the best. I know recently that's probably not as good of an argument because of how good Paolo's looked. But that there's still a chance that like Franz could be the guy. Whether it's 80-20, probably Paolo Franz is probably what it is now.
Sure.
If we had taken Chet, I don't know that he would have the same success that he's had in OKC. So, because we would have asked him to do way more.
I think that goes a little bit for both. And it's also too. It's like we lacked that offensive threat for so long that could also be a playmaker. And we already had like some good defensive potential players on our team.
Correct.
The Jonathan Isaacs of the world, the Jalen Suggs, and things like that. And it's like, Chet's going to be awesome as a defensive player, and he's got definitely a lot of offensive potential, but I don't ever see him being that like top 5, top 10 offensive player in the league that we kind of needed. And there's like, that's how I'm always going to like lean on why we needed that, why he was the better player for us at the time too. And I'll just be honest, like, since we're on the topic, I will always be nervous of players with his body type being sustained at a long, where it's like, Paulo's like, I feel like he could get hit by a train and probably still be fine.
He was born to play in the NBA.
Yeah.
He has an NBA body. He's huge.
Built like a rock.
Yeah. Like, my biggest concerns with him are about efficiency, which I think you could still be concerned about, although I'm not as worried about it. But Chet, I think everybody's happy. 1-2, those two teams, OKC and us. Like, I think they got the guy that was probably best suited for them.
Well, Steve. So, like, moving a little bit past that, now we are like this Magic team. We're halfway through the season by a few games. We got a 22-20 record. We are, I wouldn't say firmly anymore. We're firmly in the 8th, 9th like spot where we have 22 games. The Bulls just won. They're on a little bit of a streak right now, playing well. They have 21 games. We have a few games to make up to get back into that like 6th, 7th, 5th range in the standings. But this team has been, we had that hot start, right? I have a couple of stats. I don't typically pull a lot of stats, but I have a few. We went 16-7 through the first 23 games, and now we've gone 6-11 to round us out to 42 games this season. So like, it's been a little bit of up and down. We all thought as fans, like, oh, it's cool. We're coming in pretty healthy. We lost Wendell and Fultz early, but like, we had so much success without them for a while. It kind of it went on the back burner on the injuries. And then we just got hit with the plague of injuries again and sickness. And it's been a little up and down. I like to describe it as a roller coaster. So far, how have you been taking in this season as a fan, as an observer of the Magic?
Yeah, it's funny. Like we do the Bill does every year the annual over-unders pod with House and Russillo, and they go through every team, and they have I think the Magic were, I want to say 37.5 was the number for win totals, and it was kind of like a back and forth thing. I thought the number was like pretty good. I of course like would be biased and say, oh, I think it would be over, but it wouldn't be over by like 10 games. I thought it would it'd be close. Maybe they'd be a 500 team. So if you were to tell me right now at the midway point of the season that they're 22-20 before the season, I'd be like, yeah, that's a great leap, because like I think a lot of Magic. This is to your question earlier about just like what sort of the national media doesn't know sometimes about like a specific team. Is that the Magic, when they started last year, they started 5-20. It was a horrific start. A lot of that was because they didn't have Fultz, and there was
or any point guard.
Yeah, they were basically making Franz and Paolo do it.
Yeah.
But then after that point, they were a 500 team basically for the rest of the season. And so I kind of assumed that would happen this year as well. So for them to be a couple games over 500, if you would have told me that, in October, that this would be where they're at right now, I'd be like, yeah, that's fine. I think obviously we're a little bit bummed out because of how great the start was and what sort of like because I remember saying on Ryan's pod, maybe like a couple weeks in, and it was in the middle, I think, of that winning streak. I'm going, I think we might need to reevaluate what our expectations are for the season. Like it might not just be playing. It might be like get an actual playoff spot, like go like 1 through 6, like don't dip into the play-in. And I think that's still not unrealistic. It's just that the injuries have kind of killed all of the momentum that this team has had. And you're right. Like it was kind of weird because they did play well without some of those guys. Obviously Goga's had a pretty big, breakout sort of at least like, quarter of a season. But that doesn't mean that I think he should be a starter. I think that Wendell is like expendable by any means. I still think Wendell is an incredibly important player to this team going forward. They just happened to play well without him for a while. Same thing with Markelle Fultz. It's kind of amazing that Anthony Black has given them sort of the minutes that they've gotten so far, but is that something that you can count on for an entire season from a rookie? Probably not. So, I think and then obviously now Franz being out has been just kind of like, they really can't overcome that on a night in, night out basis. And so like my expectation for the team is like, all right, yeah, like I still think that everything is on the table. They're still a good team. They still have to get healthy, and anything from I feel like 5 to like 10 is probably realistic. Like the East is still really packed in that part of the standings. So I'm okay with where we're at. Obviously, it's been a bummer because it's been like a little bit of a rough stretch here. But get healthy. I think they have one of the easiest schedules for the remainder of the season. And I know that's sometimes deceptive based on like who's healthy and whatever. But like the schedule is pretty manageable here on the way out. I expect them to be a competitive team night in, night out. And that's kind of how I feel. And if we're in the plan, great. If we somehow make the 6th spot, that's great too. I think anything in that range is what we expected this season. And I would be happy with that.
Yeah, then that's fair too. I would be understanding if we made the play-in at this point, just because of the run that we've had right now, and the lack of runway lack of runway. We still have half the season left, but still, I mean, it's not nearly as much cushion as before to make up, to kind of get back into that like not play in spot, to jump into that 6th or 5th position. But I don't think it's impossible, right?
They're only 2 games back. They're only 2 games back.
2 games. And Franz is questionable going into today's game. By the way, I don't think I said this at the top of the podcast, but Magic fans, if you're listening, this is being recorded on the morning of January 21st or early afternoon. This will hopefully come out before the Miami game when the Magic play them in a handful of hours, but we'll see if I can get it edited and up in that amount of time. If not, you'll be hearing it shortly after or before. But yeah, man, so it's like we have some space to catch up. Franz is questionable going into this game, which I feel pretty good by saying, like, if he's not playing this game, then he'll be back probably the next game. We got to, we have another, we on a back-to-back. Do we play tomorrow? Yeah, we have a back-to-back. Cleveland comes in tomorrow, but then there's like a good most of the week off. Our next game isn't until Friday versus Phoenix or Memphis Grizzlies. So it's like there's some time there, and then this is where we're starting to get into that second half of this month where it's like gonna start easing up schedule-wise. Like you mentioned, we have the easiest remaining schedule left. It's just like, man, it shows. I think we learned how important Franz is to this team, right? Like,
yeah,
we were able to survive without Fultz, without Wendell Carter Jr. Black playing at an NBA defensive level really helped, and not like a guy who needed to learn how to play NBA defense. Like, he was just there from day one. I think we learned that like Goga is a serviceable like high end backup that for a while there. And like, I have a take on Twitter where I got some heat for it. I was like, yeah, Wendell needs to earn his spot back. And I meant that at the time. And I still kind of stand by it to an extent. Granted, he's played really well the last couple of games where it's like, dude, he didn't only just come into this season and then like get hurt, but like he looked awful before he got hurt and then looked pretty bad after he came back too.
Yeah.
Granted, you could chalk that up to he was still not fully healthy, but
I think you need to get in shape a little bit more. Yeah. Yep.
For sure. But okay, so like we have this information. We have a bunch of rumors going into the trade, not a bunch, but a few, like Wendell, like the two names I just dropped, Wendell and Markelle Fultz. Like, what's your thoughts with this team going into the trade deadline and some of the rumors that you've been hearing?
I mean, I think we've been saying this for the last decade. Like, can we just get some shooting? Can we get some shooting? Because what's funny is you're right. Like the Franz thing has been a little bit weird because at first, like, he goes out and it's like, all right, just put the ball in Paolo's hands, like spread it out and just let him kick. And then we had a couple good games shooting from three. We beat Denver and I think Atlanta in back-to-back games. And it's like, whoa, is this actually the way that we should play with Paolo as like basically just like I hate saying this, but like a poor man's LeBron, like just give him the ball and then put a bunch of people who are going to be shooters or whatever, or rollers. And it kind of worked for a couple games. And you had people, I think, in Magic circles being like, wait, do we need Franz? Like, is this how the team should play? And I'm glad that I don't like the losses, but I'm glad that it is sort of like that's come crashing down to earth because it's totally, it's a dumb debate to have. To ask Paolo to do that on a night in, night out basis is terrible. I was also extremely frustrated with how the offense was like. I didn't think there was any like plays being called. I thought it was just like, hey, Paolo, go out there and just be super talented.
Do the thing.
And yes, he is capable of doing that sometimes, but that shouldn't be your offense. Like, that shouldn't be how you try to win games. And that I'm not like, this isn't like a knock on Coach Mosley or anything like that, but it's like, that's just a flawed way of trying to like actually build a team. So I'm kind of happy that we've again realized how important Franz is to this team. But I'm still kind of in the camp of, let him get fully healthy. Like, I'm not trying to rush anybody back. Like, we're still, this isn't like a dire situation where we have to like have guys being playing hurt. So, if he could play today, great. If it's another game or two, I'm sort of okay with that. Just like be healthy. Don't rush back and then get another injury and kind of ruin even a bigger chunk of the season. So as far as the trade deadline though, yeah, like I've said Buddy Hield's name forever. I don't know what Indiana's going to do now. Obviously they made the Siakam trade and they have some high aspirations for this season and the next couple of seasons. So I don't know if that like changes what his value is to them. Like, would I trade Wendell for him? No, I don't. I would not.
Yeah,
to me, like Wendell is a very valuable player. There are not very many centers that can do the things that he can do on that incredible of a contract for another like 2-3 years. I forget how many years are left. So if you're trading Wendell Carter, like you better get like somebody really freaking good back. It's not to get somebody like Buddy Hield because if that's the case, I'll just wait until the summer and add shooters in free agency.
That's like, a different play. A Buddy Hield move, in my opinion, is like trading Gary Harris. If you don't feel like bringing Chuma back next year, and you know that today, throw him in there. Yeah, something like that. Fultz, I have a hard time like. Oh, before we go on to Fultz, Wendell Carter Jr. I want to stay there for half a second. Sorry, my brain's moving faster than I can.
No, it's all good. I throw a lot of names at you. It's fine.
Like Wendell Carter Jr. I agree with you. Like, I think what I've learned with the Goga experience is that this team can be successful with a different type of center than Wendell Carter Jr. at center, because like they are totally different types of centers. You know, Goga, in my opinion, is a different type of defender. He can't guard the perimeter as much, but he's a much better paint defender, in my opinion. A bigger body to protect the rim. You know, he's a kind of like a little bit of a different type of play finisher. Can't stretch the floor. Definitely a better rebounder. So like they're just different players where like Wendell Carter's got a better offensive package. He's got some more post moves. He can stretch the floor. He's a little bit more of a versatile defender because he can play the 4 and the 5. And I think just overall better passer. So like Wendell is the better player, but I think we've learned that we can survive a little bit with Goga. But I agree with you. I wouldn't trade Wendell just to trade him or to get like you said, like a Buddy Hield or I don't even know if I would trade Wendell to go get like a Malcolm Brogdon, like as a, you know, he's a, nope. But if he could, I would consider trading Wendell if we could maybe get a player that's going to be a longer term fit for a need that we have to fill, right? I don't know what that player is. Like, I don't think some of my friends in my group text are going to hate me for this because they've been bashing on me it forever. But like, if the front office really thought Dejounte Murray was like the fix for long term at point guard, who I'm like, dude, go get him. I would love him on this team. You know, okay, I would include Wendell in that type of trade because that's like fixing a bigger need, in my opinion, than fixing center at this moment. And then you can fix center later. But you're right. I agree with you. You don't trade him for like Buddy Hield. Now, you mentioned potentially throwing in like a Markelle Fultz. Now, dude, man, he's had such an interesting season. So first off, like, what are your thoughts on Markelle this season? Granted, it's a little early. He's still coming back from injury to an extent. But like, he's not on a contract extension. I just had Keith Smith on the show last week with Yahoo and or not Yahoo Spot Track, and he's like, I haven't even heard a peep of a contract extension, and he's the guy that knows that kind of shit. So it's like, what are your feelings just on him with this team going forward? And just Markelle Fultz. I'll just leave it there.
I'll preface this by saying that I have been like a big Markelle guy for the last few years. I thought he was one of the more underrated players in the league. Another classic case of like, if you didn't watch Magic games night in, night out, like you didn't realize actually how important he was to this team and how good he was, despite the fact that, he's never going to be a great shooter, but he's a really good point guard. He's a good defender. And they've just like sorely missed him for stretches the last couple of years when they didn't have him.
Absolutely.
Now that I think Franz and Paolo are a little bit more polished in the playmaking ability, and obviously they draft a guy like Anthony Black, and they just re-signed Cole Anthony. Like, the writing for me is kind of on the wall. Like, I just don't know. Like, are you gonna like what is the point in re-signing him? Like, if you have all these other, obviously Jalen Suggs is still here, not a pure point guard, but still, can play that role. I think he's just expendable, and I hate saying that because I really like the guy. I don't know that his future is with the team, and certainly with a contract extension. So if you can use him as an expiring to get somebody, I think you do it. Again, I don't know. I mean, Keith would know better than me, like what his value is around the league. I don't know how. It might just be purely as an expiring contract, which is fine. So that's the guy I would have, as much as I like the guy, I would have no problem with them potentially putting Fultz in a trade, because I don't know that he's the long-term fix. Because again, you're going to need, if you're going to have Paolo and Franz as your primary sort of like, playmaker, ball handler, or whatever, which is I think the long-term future of this team, you're going to just need shooting from the guard position. And and that's just not him. So, and that's just the great thing about Jalen Suggs and him shooting like 40% from 3 this year, is that like, that's who we needed him to become. And he has become that guy, which is incredible. But you can't have another non-shooter, essentially at the guard position. So you need somebody like DeJounte's an interesting name. I don't love him as much as some other people do. I know he hit the game winner against us a couple days ago, so people are gonna think I'm a hater. I like him. I think he's like a B+ player. Not that I wouldn't take him. It would depend on the trade. I'd have to see what the trade is. But and that's the question. Like, I don't know who that answer is, but I would want a shooting guard who, can have some playmaking responsibilities, but mostly is just like a good shooter and a good defender. because that's what I think this team needs, and that's just not Fultz. So I would assume that if they're trying to look around, that Fultz is on the table for just about any ways to try to improve this team's roster right now.
Yeah, and I agree with you, and on a lot of aspects there. Like, this isn't necessarily about Fultz the person. He's a great person, great story to get behind. A lot of reasons to want to support him as a player. He does have good basketball skills, good defender, good playmaker. Obviously, we've seen the last good locker room guy. We've seen the last couple of games, like his ability to like get to the basket still and throw down in transition is still very real. It seems like his TOS is flared back up and messing with his shot again. And that's concerning too, for not even just us who need shooting, but like teams around the league. But I don't know, man. I don't, you're right. I don't know what his trade value is either. If it outside of expiring, like maybe a team wants to take a flyer and see if he can run a second unit one day. I don't know. Like a San Antonio or something like that, who kind of needs some stability at point.
Yeah.
But you're right, man. I don't know. So it's like, I have a feeling with the point guard situation where it's like, we might move on from Fultz this deadline or this summer, but we still probably need a stopgap point guard for like a year or two until Black is ready. And I just don't see too many guards on the market that are like the long-term fix. But I do see plenty of guards that could be a stopgap for us for like a year or two and whatnot. Go ahead.
What do you think about, because this has been floated a lot. I don't know how I feel about this. There's been a lot of Tyus Jones talk. Obviously he could shoot, good playmaker. He's small, man. Like, I just worried, defensively, like in the playoffs, like that just doesn't fly. But yeah, like he offers the shooting and the playmaking that would sort of like definitely fit a regular season need. And if you don't have to give up a ton to get him, I'd be interested in Tyus Jones.
I'm like 50-50 on him. Like, there's times I'm like, dude, all right, let's go get him. But then I'm like, okay, 6'1". We literally just gave a 3-year extension to Cole, who is also 6'1". We really want both of our main point guards running each unit to be that small. And granted, like, Tyus is tough. He can defend, but he's like positionally, like, you can't really throw him on too many guys outside of like the shortest guy in the lineup, which is typically the point guard. And do I want to pay him his next contract? Maybe,
probably,
but I don't know if I want to pay him a really big contract. Like, if I could get him on like a nice 2-year deal, but he's youngish, he's gonna want like a nice long deal, probably with a lot of money. And it's just like, I don't know what his current, like, do we want to pay him much more than we're paying Cole? Because that's what it's going to come down to, right? I think Cole's going to be making like 10, 11 a year for the next 3 years. And like Tyus, like, do we want to pay him probably like 15 to 17 a year for the next 3? I don't know if I do. I honestly think I'd rather go trade for Malcolm Brogdon and deal with him for like 2 years and and then hopefully Black is ready to take over by the time Brogdon's contract is up in like another season, right? That's kind of like more or less my mindset with Tyus Jones. But Tyus is a really good player. He's filled in awesome for the Grizzlies before he was moved on to Washington. I can't pretend I've watched him much in Washington, but I don't know. That's kind of how I feel about Tyus.
As long as it's not Zach LaVine, I am a never Zach LaVine guy. Like, I never want him on the Magic. I don't want him on any. No one should want him on their favorite team. I think he might be my least favorite player in the NBA. I say that as respectfully as possible. Sure, he's a nice guy. I don't know. I do not like watching him play. I think he is just like an overall net negative to a franchise. And anybody that's talking about him being like a guy, oh yeah, he can shoot and do all this stuff. No, because he's. We need somebody who doesn't think they're the best player on the team, too. That's the problem, too. And he's going to come in and want the shots and think he's the dude. Oh, all these younger guys, like, I'm the vet, I'm the guy. I don't want anything to do with the Zach LaVine type. So, like, there just aren't that many names. Like, we can make stuff up. Like, I was like getting all excited when there was a rumor about Lauri Markkanen being available, and I was like, just go get Lauri. Like, who cares? Like, totally. just be gigantic. But then, people are just like, yeah, why would they trade him? Like, he's making reasonable money. He wants to stay in Utah. He's under contract for another few years, and it's like, yeah, that's probably right. Like, it's going to take an insane haul to get him out of there, and I probably wouldn't give that up. So, like, I just don't know that the person exists, who we're trying to figure out. So we're like operating on the fringes of, like, that's why you're talking about your Tyus Jones, your Brogdons, your Buddy Hield. It's like, there isn't, like, ideally, we could add our version of Derek White, right? But I don't
Right.
know that guy is out there. I don't know that there's somebody like that. And correct me if I'm wrong if you think there's somebody else, but I just don't know that there's like this obvious move to be made, which is why I just like wouldn't be that upset if they just kind of held status quo, played out the rest of the year with who they have, learn a little bit more about what you have, and then obviously make some free agent signings in the summer.
I feel like we're going to see something similar to what you just said. I don't know if it's going to be exactly like stay status quo. Like I'm hopeful like, all right, man, the writing's got to be on the wall with Gary Harris, right? And if the writing truly is also on the wall with Markelle Fultz, I'd like to see like something done with those guys. Just so, they're not, I don't know. It's like maybe we're just selling Gary Harris for a second round pick. Cool. Let's do that. That opens up playing time for Chuma and Jet, or not Chuma and Jet, for Caleb and Jet, right?
I would not do that though, because I still think Gary, like for this season, is valuable. He's still like a vet who's the shot has gotten better after kind of a couple weird years there. I'd be cool with just I actually would not just sell him for nothing now. I'd just rather let him walk this summer, because at some point you still want to be competitive this year. And I don't want to hand those minutes to Jet. I don't know. Listen, I know Jet's been lighting it up and for the secondary team there, but I'm not ready to hand those minutes over to someone like him yet. I still think Gary has value this season.
And I don't think that's what they're going to do, just to be clear. I could see that as what they could do, but I don't think that's what they're going to do. I think what we're going to see, Steve, is I think we're going to see a framework of like Gary and Chuma and like the Denver pick, and they're going to go get a stopgap point guard. Or maybe it's Fultz in the Denver pick, and I think they're going to go chase a Malcolm Brogdon or a Tyus Jones or D'Lo, maybe. I don't know.
Luke Kennard is a guy.
Luke Kennard, something like that. I think they're going to do that. I don't think they're going to move a player to open up minutes for Jet. I just don't see that happening. I mean, they could, but, and I know it's sort of contradicting what I just said a few minutes ago, but like, again, I want to make sure it's clear, like, they could sell Gary for a second. I don't think they will. I think they're actually going to be buyers and upgrade something on the margins, but I don't think we're going to go see that splash move where they're trading 3 or 4 picks for some big name. That might come this summer, or it might come next deadline, because they have between now and next deadline to really kind of take advantage of the cap space that we have at the moment. So before like the Franz, I'm assuming max contract kicks in, and Suggs at this point, he's playing himself into a really expensive contract. How do you feel about the front office though? Like, do you trust them to make these, to take the right steps at the right time to make us, a solidified playoff team and eventually contender in the next couple of or a few years, long-term future?
I don't know why you wouldn't. I don't think that they've made any like disastrous moves. Like I think they've we pointed to sort of the past of like kind of like the unlucky lottery luck over time, and I think we're certainly better off than we were during like the Rob Hennigan era. So
absolutely,
is it perfect? No. I mean, I think there's a lot of noise from like people outside of Orlando being like, why don't they make their version of the Siakam trade? Like, why don't they go out and go all in on this team? When I've just sort of take the more conservative approach, like let these guys grow. We don't even know like what exactly the best way to play is yet sometimes. And especially with the Franz injury, now we've seen less and less of those two guys together. So I do have faith because, I guess why, if I didn't, that would be pretty depressing. But also, like, I just don't know that I have any evidence to suggest that like, I don't have faith in them. Like, I think they've done a good job of drafting. I think, one of the issues that I had with last summer and the 2 first-round picks was I didn't know that we had, and I think it's kind of come to fruition, I didn't know that we had enough playing time or just like the ability on like the coaching staff from like just like a manpower position to develop these guys. We have so many young players. The team is so young. We have so many draft picks. That like I was kind of like, why don't they try to maybe pair those together to either move up or try to get somebody like a more proven guy. I like
I was
Anthony
in that
Black
camp too, by the way.
Yeah, I like Anthony Black, and I like at some point like maybe there just wasn't a trade there to be made, so you have to just make the picks, and they made 2 picks that I know people didn't like the Jet pick, but I don't know, man. It might turn out to be fine, and Black seems like a good player, so I don't think that's like a disaster at all either. I actually like that they're being patient because I think like you can go like the Cleveland route where you can say, hey, let's go and trade for Donovan Mitchell. And, I know they're kind of shooting up the standings and whatever, and they look like a decent team, but I think they've done two things. One, I think they've stunted the growth of Mobley. And maybe he was never going to be a great offensive player, but maybe he could have had more a better offensive role if they didn't have two of those dynamic guards playing who are going to score the most of the points and need most of the shots. And now look what's happening. Like Donovan's probably going to want out of there. He's going to get traded, and then what are they left with? Maybe they'll be better off. Maybe they won't. Because I know they're like Bill specifically was like, why don't you guys go out and get Donovan Mitchell? I'm like, because then what? Like the timeline is all way off. Like Donovan's the best player on the team. You still have Paulo and you still have Franz. You think those guys could be all stars too? You're stunting their growth. So I agree with the front office in like taking the patient approach to team building. You're also Orlando. It's not New York or LA or Miami where it's like you have kind of more time to let the cake bake a little bit than it is to just like always be in championship or bust mode. So I do have faith in them, man. Like, obviously let's see what happens at the deadline. Let's see what happens over the summer. But I don't have any reason to like not believe that we're headed in the right direction, that we should feel good about where we're going.
And I agree with that too. They especially in recent years, like they've been hitting on draft picks a lot better. Caleb Houston.
Love him.
He's got some upside. He's on a great contract. He's had some rough shooting recently, ever since he turned 21. Granted, he's been up and down this whole year, but his birthday was like the game after he went off for like 25 points against Atlanta, and so that's my joke. Now it's like, dude, when you were 20, you couldn't drink, you were great. You must be hungover every game.
Yep.
But it's like they have a little bit of time. Franz's contract that comes in is not until another year and a half, and like that's when like things get a little bit tight. But even at that point, it's like, dude, Franz is gonna be like what, 23, 24, and Paulo's gonna be 22. Like, there's no teams that are going and winning championships this young. But I do think they need to continue to like plug in the holes of this roster, figure out what's going on with like, if they truly believe Black is the long-term answer at point guard, like, cool, go find a stopgap a little bit just to kind of like bridge the gap a little, keep some stability in there from him and Fultz. Maybe find some more like veteran shooting on this team because, like Ingles isn't going to be here forever. Now, granted, I don't want him to be replaced anytime soon. I love Joe Ingles. He's been like one of my favorite additions to this team, but like, continue to find some stability, like go get something that's like not going to crush anyone, but like go get Buddy Hield or Gary Trent Jr. or something like that, who's also like expiring, and see if you can get them back on a reasonable like short-term deal for a year or two. So that's kind of my thoughts right there with the front office. So
I'll add this too. Like if they don't add shooting over the next trade deadline / off season, because at the end of the day, like the most annoying part I think of the team, and again, like sometimes you can only play the cards that you're dealt, right? And maybe those deals weren't out there, maybe the trade to make to trade those 2 picks for a shooter weren't out there, and we don't know. So like, okay, like just make the picks. But it's so clear to me that like the future of this team is if you give Franz and Paolo more spacing. With how good they are going to the hoop, I mean, Franz is unreal at the rim, and Paolo's getting there too, and better at the free throw line. Like the more space, like the path is give those guys more spacing. It's why I love Wendell, because Wendell is like not the traditional center. He can step out, he can shoot. He's not going to clog up the lane, but he's still a good defender in that way. Like if they don't go down that path, because it's so clear that like that's how those guys take the next steps of being more efficient and better, and the team like running more efficiently, then I will worry. But I like to say that like, because it hasn't happened over the last like 2 sort of like drafts or off seasons, I'm not going to panic yet. But if they like at some point, like the shooting thing needs to be addressed, period. And that's when I would start to get concerned if it didn't happen. Like if we're going into next year asking these questions again, then I'm going to be annoyed.
It's funny that, and I agree with that, but it's funny you were talking about Franz and like his ability to at the rim. I don't remember the numbers anymore off the top of my head, but someone recently posted like our drives and attacks at the basket with Franz and without Franz being available. And it's like, I think it was like down 25 to 30% without Franz on the pressure of, getting to the basket and stuff like that. It's like, we turn into a shooting team when he's not available because we don't have anyone else to drive. It's like, we're filling in with Chuma, who's done really well in his role recently. And then, Caleb, who's been a little up and down, and no disrespect to those guys, but that's just not like the long-term fit that can replace someone as Franz. It was fine for a few games, but hopefully we get Franz back soon. All right, man, before we wrap up, we've been been recording for about 50 minutes. I got one to two more questions for you, but I think they'll be quick. We're retiring Shaq's jersey. How do you feel about that?
I don't like it. I don't like it at all, to be honest with you. And this isn't like an anti-Shaq thing. Like, I don't really hold any ill will towards him, what happened or leaving. I mean, again, I was like kind of young when that happened, but just like looking back at it, like it doesn't really bother me that much. I don't think he was that excited about it, which kind of bummed me out, which it just feels like if this is what you're going to do and it's like, hey, we're going to retire someone's jersey. I just wish there was more excitement around it. Like, I think why now is one question that I would have. Is he a guy when you think of Shaq that you think of the Orlando Magic? Like, I don't know that that's really true anymore. Like, I would have retired Penny's jersey before I retired Shaq. I would retire one because I think the two best players in the history of the franchise, like, I'm not saying like all-time rankings, but what they meant to the team and how much they actually cared about the team would maybe be T-Mac and Penny. So I'd retire one before I retired 32. And yeah, just watching TNT when that whole thing happened, like, I was just kind of like underwhelmed by the whole thing. And it kind of made me seem like it was like embarrassing in a weird way. Like, I was just like, it should mean more. And, I'm not saying Shaq didn't do a ton for the team. He did. He put him on the map. They got him to the finals. Like, there was like a lot of the Magic nostalgia of the 90s is because of him. So I'm not like trying to diminish the role that he played with the organization, but I just think that we should hold that honor in like a little bit more of a higher tier. And so am I mad about it? No, but I if you're asking me like, do I like it or not? The answer is no.
No, that's totally fair. I have a lot of those things too. Like, why now? Like, why change the standards of we're only going to retire jerseys when we start winning championships? Like, why did that standard change today? It just seems like a media pull, right? More so than like we actually want to do this. Like, no, like we're doing this because we're getting pressure, not because we've won a championship. Like, I agree that Shaq should have eventually gotten retired, but like it just seems like there's more questions as to why now that I have like floating around, and it seems like you do too. And it's like, dude, I'm laughing this morning because like I think a little like within the last week, Shaq on a podcast talked about his beef with Dwight, and it's like they're still going back and forth on the timeline on Twitter, and I'm just like, man, we're retiring a guy's jersey who is beefing with one of the best players to ever wear a Magic jersey still. It's like you guys are acting like children. It just like I would have just preferred them to like keep the whole Hall of Fame thing and then retired Shaq's jersey in a decade from now when we've already maybe won a championship and there's another name out there that might be retired first, and just like I don't know, it just seems weird.
Yeah, I'm not a Dwight guy. I obviously loved him when he was here, and but I'm like still sort of bitter about how things ended. And here's the thing: is like he fucked up his career just as much as he screwed up like the Magic's future and during that whole debacle. But at least like I don't know. I think there's you have to retire Dwight's jersey then, which like if Shaq's getting, I mean Dwight was here for longer. I would argue that he definitely gave the team more competitive years than Shaq ever did. And yeah, sure, is he a flawed player and did things end poorly? Yeah, but like if you're gonna do Shaq, you have to do Dwight. I just like I don't know, like when you think of retired players, you're like guys that love the franchise, and I just don't know that I ever think Shaq is like a huge Magic guy. He got drafted there. He had some good years, and then he moved on to bigger and better things. Again, I don't harbor any ill will, but it's awkward. Like it's awkward, I think, for everybody to be like, oh, okay, like this is happening. Sure. Like be happy about it. And I'm kind of like, I wish it was like a little bit more of somebody that I could pull for, I know people are like, oh, Nick Anderson or there's so many other guys that I would have probably retired their jersey before Shaq.
Yeah. It just feels like a big media pull to make a big splash.
But why? Like, why do you think they even need that? Like, why do you think they would even like we're in good graces now. Like people like the Magic now.
35 anniversary. You know what I think it was, Steve? I think it was like this team's on the up and up. Shaq talks a lot of shit about the Magic on a regular basis and like doesn't not shit, but like it's like cares? Little like his side comments. I think it's like the Magic trying to buy some like goodwill with national media. That's kind of what I actually think it is, as this team is young and coming up, and like wanting, and it's probably not this, but like that's what I can't help but think. Like, are you just trying to buy Shaq to talk nicely about Paulo and Franz in these next couple of years? With I don't know. That's how I justify them like changing their standards of not being able to do it. So,
but if Shaq's going to talk, if Shaq's going to talk shit about the team and not fully buy into Paulo and Franz, that's a him problem, man. Like he's wrong. So like, cool. Like you can go on TNT and say all that stuff, but like people who know ball, like know that you're wrong. So I don't know. Like he would, if he was going to continue to do that, then he's going to is the one that's going to sound like an idiot. So I don't know. We probably spent too much time on it already, but I don't know. It just leaves a bad taste in my mouth.
Yeah, it's weird for sure. All right, so we're retiring a jersey. We can't change that as much as we think it's weird. Who's next? Who do you want to see up there second?
Oh, I said like, I mean, I would just retire one then, have it be a Penny and T-Mac night. And that would be way more joyous than, and again, I know like obviously T-Mac left too, but it just, he still comes back to Orlando. He's still a part of the team. Like,
he was like he was a part of the G League team for like a season a few years ago as like a consultant or whatever.
I also understand why he left too. The team kind of wasn't, it was all him, and the Rockets thing was what it was. So I guess it would be one as sad. I mean, I guess Jonathan Isaac would have to figure out a new number sooner or later, but it would be that. And then you have to retire Dwight if you're retiring Shaq's jersey, So, Nick Anderson would be in that range as well. I think another guy who like clearly like loves the franchise, and and it would just be, again, that would be like a nice thing, obviously, after all the crap that he's gone over the free throw situation.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's kind of where I would go next. Although again, I don't want this to be like the Yankee thing where like every number is retired. Like I think it should matter. I don't want to just start this thing of like this avalanche of retiring numbers. Not that that's what's going to happen, but I'm just more protective of stuff like that.
I actually don't know if I want Nick's number retired. I mean, he's great, first Magic player ever, but like, kind of just like a good NBA player, and that's
I wouldn't argue with you there. Yeah,
that's kind of like, doesn't mean I don't love him as a part of Magic history. I absolutely do, and I think he's a lot more than just the missed free throws in the finals. But it's like, I don't often agree with Steve Martin Alex Martin, and it's like, but he did say, when. And I think on the radio spot in a local radio station in Orlando is like, like Hall of Fame caliber players, like, NBA Basketball Hall of Fame caliber players. And like, I feel like you kind of got to be in that space to get your jersey retired.
I wouldn't argue with you.
Yeah. Yeah. I do think if we do retire the number one for Penny and Shaq or Penny and T-Mac, you got to do two different jerseys. You can't do one with two names on it. You got to have one for Penny, one for T-Mac. That's one with the
pinstripes and the other one with the star jersey that they have now. Perfect.
Absolutely.
Done and done.
Yeah.
You do it in one night together. It's like a great night for both guys. Like that's a no-brainer to me.
Dude, let's throw a party. And let's see if we can get it before the game and not like afterwards when people are dipping out,
gone. Yep.
So, yeah, for sure. Steve, this has been a lot of fun, man. I appreciate you taking the time out of your day on a playoff football Saturday, and also, before the Magic play and hopefully whoop ass on the Miami Heat later today.
I know.
Thank you so much for joining us. If you got anything, I mean, you don't like write content, but you produce content. Just let the listeners know where they can find you.
I mean, all the Ringer stuff. I mean, Bill, Ryan, like I said, we do talk like a decent amount of Magic. I know some people are upset because Bill, in the power poll that Bill does, he didn't do enough on the Magic, I think, for some people this time around. But Bill is actually a Magic believer. Like he likes watching the team. Same thing with Ryan. And the front office and like the media guys, they're always great to us and all the shows and stuff. I think fingers crossed we're going to have Jalen Suggs coming up on Wednesday's episode of the Russillo show. So
let's go.
So, I mean, I know Franz has been making the rounds, but we haven't really heard a lot from Jalen, especially on national outlets. So I think this will be the first like real good interview that he does nationally. So we're looking forward to that. So check that out on the Russillo feed Wednesday.
You got to get Paulo on one of these shows soon.
We had Paulo last
All-Star
year.
campaign.
Well, that's true too.
We got to get him on that All-Star campaign. I mean, he's gonna make it, but
I think we had Paulo on his rookie year. I forget what. I think it was
winter
of last year.
That was on Rusella's podcast,
on
right?
Yep.
Yeah, that was good.
So like I said, I can't thank the Magic. Their like media team they treat us incredibly well, and I think they also know that, like, you know, we care. We're going to do a good interview with them. So I'm really interested in hearing what Suggs has to say on Wednesday. So that'll be fun.
That will be a lot of fun. I'm looking forward to checking out that episode when it comes out. So, well, all right, Magic fans, we got the Heat coming up in a few hours, and hopefully we get some health back with Franz very, very soon, if not today. Thanks for tuning in. Make sure you check out all of the Ringer content. Support Steve. Follow him on Twitter. He posts a lot about soccer, but also a good amount about the Magic. So if you're,
it's a little niche.
It's
a little bit niche, but yeah, if you like any of that stuff, give me a follow.
It's a good follow for sure. And thanks for tuning in. We'll catch y'all next week on the next episode. Peace.